I took a class while doing my postgraduate studies called epistemology. It's the study of learning how we know what we know. I learned that one of the biggest mistakes that most people make in regards to the truth they believe is they usually study to substantiate what they already believe and rarely study with an open mind to find what's really true. If this is the only thing you ever learn in regards to what's true about anything, you will be miles ahead of most people in the world with more accurate, useful knowledge that leads to a more balanced and happy life. And the amazing thing is, it's not that hard to do. Let me give you some examples. In 2013, the Afghan government tried to pass a law that prohibited a man from beating his wife. It didn't pass. The Afghan men primarily believe it's their God-given right to beat their wife whenever they want. So is this the real truth even for him? If we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the need for love and acceptance is the second highest human need, second only to the need for food and shelter. So when seeking real truth, we have to ask, does the belief that it's his right to beat his wife whenever he wants achieve the love and acceptance of his children and his wife, or even his own? Not a chance, not ever. We've understood the psychology of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and its effect on human nature worldwide for more than 100 years. Do you think an Afghan woman has less of a need for love, respect, and acceptance than an American woman, or an English woman, or a French woman, or any woman anywhere in the world for that matter? Of course not. Before I go any further, let me tell you, my field of study is psychology, studying how people think and what motivates them. And I'm going to be blunt before I get into this any further. People who believe just whatever they want to believe will rarely consider the real truth no matter what you show them. Because they choose to believe only what they want to believe, real truth is irrelevant to them. They just simply don't use it. It's my desire that you will be inspired to always seek real truth because it will always serve you well and your life will be better. Here in America, we have a similar belief to the Afghan men. We have millions of people that actually believe we have a right to be greedy and selfish. Remember, my life's work is about studying how we think, and in this case, what we choose to believe that doesn't serve us well. People who are greedy and selfish never achieve the level of happiness that other people who choose to be unselfish and kind do. Let me give you a couple of examples. Walmart is one of the most talked about examples, but most large corporations share this ideology. Last year, Walmart made a profit of $120.57 billion, and the Walton family netted $16.18 billion. These figures are so large that most people can't really comprehend them. So let me give you just a little perspective. If you spent $20,000 every month for the next 100 years, you couldn't even put a noticeable dent in $16 billion. And the Waltons take home that much money every year, but they still choose to exploit the very workers that made this possible for them. Here's my point. The rich and powerful have abused and exploited average people since the beginning of time, and history shows us again and again that when people have had enough, they just rise up against their oppressors and most often just kill them. The thing that amazes me is that the rich and powerful never seem to learn a thing about this. This cycle has repeated again and again in most every country in the world. Our country has proved for the first time in the history of the world that when average workers are treated with dignity and respect, and that includes decent pay, the rich actually get richer than ever. Our economy is primarily driven by consumer spending. That's the 99% have enough money to buy things. Our corporations have made record profits over the past 10 years, but have kept almost all of it for themselves. Prices on most everything has continued to rise, but wages of American workers have stayed stagnant. This trend is not sustainable. We're the first country in the history of the world that have the power and can vote to change this trend. But millions of people vote against their own interests because they choose to believe in ideology they've been told that's not true. Believing things that are not true hurts each and every one of us, particularly when these beliefs are driven by greed and selfishness. There's a major train of thought in America that grabs at every excuse to believe that all poor people who receive government assistance are inherently lazy and irresponsible. And yet when large corporations exploit workers while making record profits and pay little or no taxes while taking government handouts into the billions, this seems to be just good business in their mind. Set aside personal beliefs and prejudices and apply a little honest logic here. Do a little research about successful, happy cultures. All Scandinavian countries are good examples of governments that serve all the people, not just a select few, and they're rated among the happiest countries in the world with the least crime. There are those that promote the idea that we should not even have a minimum wage. They say let the market dictate its own level. We actually have a real-life example of that right now. The Goodwill stores were originally founded to give handicapped people a place to work and provide purpose and stability in their lives. It was an awesome organization to begin with. But because of a 70-year-old law that excludes nonprofit companies from the minimum wage law, sadly, the greedy rich are exploiting this right now. All workers are paid below minimum wage, and some as little as 22 cents an hour. However, Jim Gibson, the national CEO, makes $729,000 annual salary, and the collective franchise CEOs across the country took away $30 million in 2011. I was originally introduced to this issue about the Goodwill stores on Yahoo News, but there's hundreds of articles written about this. Do you think most companies would be paying minimum wage if the law didn't make them? Not a chance. Some people's real truth is money motivated, and the conversation of minimum wage is certainly in that category. This in itself should give you a hint that anyone opposing the increase of minimum wage is either uninformed or blatantly lying and motivated by their own greed. Here's the place that I'm going to ask you to go look it up for yourself. If you're not used to verifying things, now's the time to start. This is your life. Take charge of it and live with your truth, not someone else's that may not really be true. We live in the age of Google. It's never been easier. Now I know there's still misinformation on the internet, but you're smart enough to find the real truth if you search with an honest, open mind. It's not that hard. Let me give you a short history lesson. During the early industrialization of America, factories worked their workers 14 to 16 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week for starvation wages in despicable, unsafe working conditions. The workers eventually rose up against the factories and forced better pay, better hours, and safer working conditions. The factory owners thought their profit margins would go down, as even you might think, but that's not what happened. As workers began to make more money and begin to have a life, they bought more of the products the factories made, and the American financial ecosystem was born. This produced the strongest economy the world has ever known, and even the greedy business owners got richer than ever. Better pay for workers does not cause inflation as many think. Just look around you. American workers' wages have been stagnant for more than 10 years, and yet inflation has marched on. Gas is higher, food prices continue to rise, rent goes up, CEOs get million-dollar raises. Now here's a little math you can do to verify the real truth and further clarify this discussion about the effect of the minimum wage on our economy. There's a little more than 10 million people on minimum wage across the USA. If they each made just $500 a month more than they make now, that would dump $5 billion into the economy every month, because people at that level of income have to spend every penny they have to survive. This money circulates through most every business in America, and we all have more. That's how the economy works. It's consumer-driven. Fact. It's the amount of money that American workers have to spend that drives the economy, not the 1% or the 10% or the tax breaks for the rich so it can trickle down to you. There are those that have been trying to sell that one to the American people for the past 30 years. Go ahead, test it. If we look at the average income of American workers, it would take the income of half the population of our country to equal the income of just the top 400 wealthiest Americans. Trickle down where? That wasn't exactly the real truth they tried to sell us on, now was it? Now don't get sidetracked on these issues. I want to encourage you to learn how to find real truth. And don't get hung up on your own preconceived ideas or someone else's truth. Practice finding the real truth for yourself. Your life will be better. Life is never better when you believe something that's not true. Think about this just for practice. There's one thing even more alarming than Wall Street hedge fund managers and unscrupulous CEOs exploiting their workers. And it's uninformed, stubborn voters that vote for ideology that hurts not only themselves, but all of us in this country. Blindly voting for something because someone else of supposed authority said it was so is just simply dangerous. It's not a few people taking advantage of food stamps or any social program for that matter that caused the biggest financial crash we've ever seen in our lifetime. It's the actions of the unregulated, out-of-control, greedy rich. And if you have any doubt about this, see the report on John Paulson, just one of thousands who fraudulently stole billions from us and got to keep all of his plunders because of deregulation. Put the blame where it belongs or we'll never recover. The question isn't about the Republican or Democrat Party or what they believe or stand for as much as it's about how we think and hang on to beliefs that hurt us just because someone of authority said it was true. It's easy to see this mistake in someone else, but it's hard to see it in ourselves. It's dangerous to believe something is true just because your pastor, priest, mom, dad, or teacher said it was true. Test it for yourself with the motive of finding what's really true. Research or study just for the purpose of substantiating what you already believe to be true doesn't help you or anyone else. The dichotomy of learning what is really true is that it's a lifelong process, and we as humans will never reach perfection about this. But my personal belief is that if we are going to err, then always err on the side of kindness. I'm Stanley Collins, and I want to encourage you to put a little effort into finding what's really true rather than swallowing unsubstantiated propaganda. Your life will be better, and you will make the world a better place.